You gone toe-to-toe with Mario. Outshine Sonic. And was the de facto mascot.
I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. You're hurting my elbow.
For Sony's PlayStation 1. Crash Bandicoot was at the top of his game. Until he wasn't. After his old creators, Naughty Dog, left him, and then Traveler's Tales released the lackluster and the divisive Crash titles, the orange marsupial would end up at Radical Entertainment, where he underwent a dramatic change. We'll take a deep look at Crash Bandicoot in his darkest hour and the sad fate of Radical Entertainment. Were Radical's Crash games bad? Or were they good? Or were they just misunderstood? From one of the most surprising corporate mergers that would change the gaming industry forever, and would spell the end for a number of game studios, to the game that would send Crash Bandicoot into a 9-year dormancy. 9 years before another mainline Crash game would appear. And the cause of this wasn't even a Crash Bandicoot game. This is the story that will show, in the world of big business, you can make a successful video game, yet still, somehow, be a failure. Please subscribe down below as it really helps out this channel. And without further ado, I'm Kev, and let's get into the history and the fall of Radical's Crash Bandicoot.
Now the only remaining option is a significant reduction in staff.
But decided against it for 3 reasons.
Be extremely positive for the future of Radical.
We are directing our resources.
It did not find a broad commercial audience.
How do we give him a whole bunch of power?
Crash has become lost in the shuffle.
So many iterations over the years.
Which we hope will please all our fans.
The studio will cease development of its own games going forward.
Crash is home at Radical. Period.
As the troubled development of Crash Twinsanity raged on into 2004, should you want to watch my full history of the problematic and ever-troubling development of Crash Twinsanity, as well as Wrath of Cortex, please check out my in-depth video I did in the description box below. The UK-based game studio Traveler's Tales,
Oxford,
was also supposed to do another Crash racing game in conjunction with Twinsanity. It was to be a follow-up to the prior Crash racing game Nitro Kart. Traveler's Tales was supposed to have done Nitro Kart, but ended up having to hand that project off to another studio, Vicarious Visions. The next Crash racing game would be handed off to another studio as well. Why exactly TT lost its second racing game is unknown, but possibly due to Twinsanity's long, difficult development and its abysmal sales. And with history deemed to repeat itself, this next Crash racing game would be handed off to another studio as well. The studio that would seize this racing game opportunity was Radical Entertainment, based in the city that invented the California Roll. Yeah, despite its name, the California Roll was invented in Vancouver, Canada. And this is where Radical Entertainment would set up shop starting in 1991. Formed after Electronic Arts gobbled up / bought up Distinctive Software, which catapulted 2 of Distinctive's employees, Ian Wilkinson and Rory Arms, into starting their own game company. Thus emerged Radical Entertainment. In the beginning, they were doing ports for the original Nintendo before branching out to other systems and other publishers, doing everything from Jackie Chan Stuntmaster the game to CSI, Crime Scene Investigation.
Of all the new crime scene investigators I interviewed for this position, you were the most promising.
Thanks, Grissom. I always thought so. Their biggest break came when they were working for Vivendi Universal, who, wouldn't you know it, happened to also own Crash. But first, Radical had to make Simpsons Hit and Run, an open sandbox-esque style game where you can run around freely in the world of Springfield, where the Simpsons live. taking cars, crashing cars, beating up pedestrians, collecting items, and drinking a new cola that drives you insane. Good times.
And we need to get rid of it before it warps any children with its bloops and bleeps.
But that game sounds awesome.
And therefore should be destroyed.
I guess.
Simpsons Hit and Run was, well, a hit, and received well, and to this day is considered one of, if not the best, Simpsons game. This probably gave Vivendi the notion to give them the next Crash racing game. There's also possibly another reason, which we'll get to, because Vivendi Universal, we're planning something. While Traveler's Tales was developing the Crash racing game, they came up with this idea of the cars combining in a move called clashing. So the game was titled Crash Clash Racing. Radical liked this idea and would adopt it. The clashing system was here to stay. If you remember anything about the previous Crash racing games, well, you can throw that all out because this one is completely different. The clashing system changes up the racing significantly. Where the other Crash racing games were more focused on speed and acquiring boosts,
Mama, I'm going fast!
This one would focus more on chaos and the mayhem you can inflict on other drivers, as the clashing feature gives you an arsenal of new weaponry. There's even a battle mode dedicated to just destroying as many cars as possible to win. Other modes include crashing into obstacles on a racetrack called the Crashinator, and of course, multiplayer. Now, you might think that that'd be it for a racing game. But oh no. Turns out, there's a whole other side to this game.
Theme park! Welcome to Motor World, the ultimate auto racing theme park in the world! Zoom, zoom, vroom, vroom, vroom! Where you and your family can experience racetracks that terrified even the bravest of souls. Earning Motor World the coveted title of the most dangerous place on Earth. So come on down to Motor World today.
As you run around Motor World, this is where you get the platforming, which is what Crash was known for. Here you can collect coins and do a bunch of minigames, from duck shooting to bowling. There's also hidden items you can find around the park, as well as getting side quests from other drivers.
I'll say Crash, boy! Come help out the crunch!
You can also abuse park guests. For fun. Talking to other parkgoers can gain you other skins to unlock for Crash. But if I can look like Indiana Jones, then I only look like Indiana Jones. Voice cast-wise, Lex Lang maintains his role as Cortex from Twin Sanity. Jess Harnell takes up the role of Crash. He was someone else in Wrath of Cortex. Debbie Derryberry is still Coco. Crash's brother Crunch is voiced by Mr. T, who is voiced by Chris Williams.
They share the work and share the credit. The point is to get the job done.
I found a ride that needs driving. You gonna help me? We bring the hurt. Eat your greens.
The infamous Nolan North, best known for playing Nathan Drake in the Uncharted series, is Injun. And wouldn't you know it, Injun is the most popular character at Radical.
Crying because I'm not pretty!
Almost as popular as the mac and cheese in the Radical cafeteria, which you could eat to your heart's content every Thursday at Radical if you worked there. I never worked there, but I'm not sad about it.
I want a mac and cheese.
Surrounding this theme park is the inevitable story. See, Motorworld is owned by Ebenezer Von Clutch, and he has been jacked. Not carjacked, but power crystal jacked. The 5 power crystals have been mysteriously stolen, and unfortunately, they power the park. Even the black power stone, which acts as the heart to Von Clutch's body, has been taken. So yeah, he's kinda dying. Luckily for Von Clutch, Crash and his friends, and enemies, were chasing each other and happened to crash on the doorstep of Motorworld. Their serendipitous arrival prompts Von Clutch to grant ownership of the park to whomever finds the power crystals first. And then you go race.
Let's try it, meatbag. Meatbag. Bag of meat.
A new game, a new world, means new characters. There's Pasadena Possum, who gains a huge crush on Crash.
Thanks a bunch, Fuzzy Drawers. This thing is gonna be the fastest piece of Texas you ever seen.
And Willy Woompachinks, who is the park's mascot, who generates Woompa Whip, a popular drink sold to the parkgoers. Yum. Released the same year YouTube was founded, in 2005, Crash Tag Team Racing, as it was now called, hit store shelves for the PS2, GameCube, Xbox, and PSP, to some beautifully mixed reviews. Praise came for the clashing system, but condemned it for its racing and how easy it is to win, with many reviews stating they actually loved the platforming parts more than the racing parts. Here's what Eurogamer had to say.
But we can quite easily imagine our 9-year-old selves giving this game 11,000 out of 10, and telling all our friends how wicked it is, and becoming exasperated by grown-ups who can't understand how wicked it is, when we've explained why it's so wicked in perfectly simple terms. Idiots. So if you're looking for a Christmas present that will please a 9-year-old whose favorite things are cars, guns, and big explosions, this will do the job nicely. Ellie Gibson, Eurogamer.
Tag Team Racing marks the beginning of a new and very different Crash at Radical Entertainment. I mean, Crash can now speak? I mean, it's baby talk, but yeah, he talks. Remember I mentioned that there might have been another reason for the transfer of Crash Tag Team Racing to Radical from Traveler's Tales? Well, that same year, Tag Team Racing released, Vivendi Universal bought Radical Entertainment.
We've had tremendous success working with VU Games over the past few years, and we believe our integration will be extremely positive for the future of Radical. VU Games recognizes and values our unique and creative work environment, as well as our commitment to developing top-selling entertainment products. We are excited to be a part of VU Games' global development team. Ian Wilkinson, President, Radical Entertainment.
So, it would make sense business-wise to have all the next upcoming Crash games made in-house by a studio they owned, rather than Traveler's Tales, who they hired.
Crash is home at Radical, period. Kirsten Forbes, producer, Radical Entertainment.
Sad words now if you know the eventual fate of Radical. In the acquisition, Radical would keep its more than 200 employees. The execs of both companies assured the Radical employees that things would remain as they were, an independent game studio. And according to one developer, they did. Radical began work on the next Crash game right after Tag Team Racing. They were completely in charge of the entire Crash Bandicoot franchise.
Crash is home at Radical, period.
However, the industry was changing.
I'm here to start you on a journey into the future of entertainment. This is my Xbox 360. It's here, and it's on.
A new breed of game began to define the market, ignited by one game in particular. Grand Theft Auto 3 and its sequels, with their hyper-violent dive into the criminal underworld in a giant open-world city to explore, which made a young wide-eyed treat hugger like myself, as well as any other kid under 17 at the time, excited to play it. And as adults told us not to play it, as Congress went against it, that just made us more desperate to play it. Also, the first-person shooter genre was starting to come into its own with smash hits like Call of Duty. Even Crash's former developers Naughty Dog had shifted their Jak and Daxter series to where, in the sequel, Jak got an edgier look and a gun, and this was to compete with Grand Theft Auto 3. Mature and teen-rated games were on a massive rise by 2006.
Now is our time!
Where 44% of gamers were between the ages of 18 to 49. Add to the fact that the best-selling video games were action games with 30% of the market, topping the second genre, which was sports games. they had only 17% of the market. The fun-loving character mascots of old were on a decline. Nintendo's GameCube was behind in sales, against the Xbox and PS2. Its Mario Sunshine was decisive among fans, due to its vastly different playstyle, and Sega's Sonic hadn't had a hit in years. This is what Ken Kutaragi, the father of the PlayStation, had conceived over 10 years ago in making the PlayStation. He wanted game consoles to no longer be associated with character mascots. Consoles had become more than just gaming platforms. The PS2 could after all play DVDs, adding that to the mix. So, where did this leave Crash? Were console mascots truly a relic of the past, with games like GTA and Call of Duty celebrating a new kind of realism? Also, with Crash's prior release, TT's Twinsanity, its lackluster performance making it the third worst-selling Crash game of all time. If you're curious which is the worst, don't worry, we'll get there. The task laid before Radical was monumental. How does one reinvigorate Crash Bandicoot to compete with GTA and Call of Duty? Well, you know what they say. If you can't beat them, join them. And that's what Radical did.
Stop walking here!
The Radicals had to make a Crash different than what came before. But, I mean, that's what Twinsanity was supposed to be. That didn't turn out so well.
I've never been so humiliated.
So, what now? What to do? Where to begin? The team at Radical began spitballing ideas. The crazier, the better. It just had to be one thing. Funny. On kidsworld.com, an article stated the ideas were things such as Nina Cortex becoming the diva of evil.
Love, diva.
InGen losing his toast recipe.
No greater doom is possible.
And Neocortex wearing squeaky rubber pants.
We had the idea in tag team racing of merging the two cars together. And so we took that, we wanted to make a new game, we stepped back, we thought, how do we give him a whole bunch of power? And the obvious answer is throw a weapon in your hand, and then we thought, oh, but if you merge them, like if we created a bunch of ferocious enemies in the game and you were able to take over and control them, these enemies essentially become your weapon. Kirsten Forbes.
Taking on that idea, leaving behind the Cortex squeaky pants idea, sadly, the team molded the idea of jacking. Yeah, it's like carjacking, just with monsters. Hence the tentative title, Crash Jacking. Building on that idea, the Radicals began to make a more action-oriented Crash, and building off their art style from the previous Crash tag team racing.
We wanted a unified style with a cast of main characters. Crash and his team had gone through so many iterations over the years, our challenge was to realign them to look like they all exist in the same universe. After that, we made them more modern. For example, we added a flair of punk to Nina along with a schoolgirl look. Same with Crash. We gave a punk edge to him. Now, they look distinct from other cartoon characters. Kirsten Forbes.
And the monsters that are to be jacked?
With the monsters, we went with a stylized look of big shoulders, big forearms, a mix of curves and angles. We found a way to bring some comic book cool to the cartoony designs.
Now that Crash had been coolified, nothing makes you cooler than tribal tattoos. The baby linguistics established in tag team racing were here yet again. For 2 months, the Radicals planned and organized the details and concept of Crash jacking. They didn't follow the gameplay or storylines of any of the previous Crash games, though they still kept with the flavor of the personalities of the characters established over 13 games ago. Yeah, it's been that many so far. Which makes this game more of a soft reboot to the franchise rather than a sequel. The story starts with Crash outside his house, helping Coco with her butter recycler. Yeah, you heard it right. Butter recycler.
We'll have a way to recycle butter!
Recycle, reduce, reuse.
Cortex shows up in his big-ass airship, spoiling all the recycling butter fun.
Is this thing on? Yeah?
kidnapping Coco and Aku Aku. Crunch gets iced, literally. Now he's stuck and no help at all.
I'm just gonna stay here a while.
And close the loop. We can close the loop. Recycle.
Knocking Aku Aku free, because Aku Aku is what you're gonna need to jack the monsters. So you beat down the monsters a bit, and then throw your Aku Aku mask on them, and whapam, monster jacked. Now Crash and Aku Aku must figure out what Cortex is up to. It doesn't take long because Cortex tells you.
Uka Uka taught me a new process called mojo mutations. I will use the stolen mojo to create a huge army of loyal mutants, not rejects like you guys.
The next 9 months of production will be spent building these 3D worlds, character models, and their moves. Each jacked monster would have his own set of moves, and Crash himself can gain new moves as you collect mojo.
You gotta have mojo, baby. Yeah!
You get mojo by defeating enemies, breaking things, and mojo is scattered about the levels.
Crash of the Titans nets out at about 30% platforming and 70% combat. The game is nicely paced in that regard. The vertical exploration is challenging and fun, and takes you to the destination fights, which are exciting and deep. Kirsten, Forbes.
Many of the voice cast from Crash Tag Team Racing return here. Chris Williams still does the voice of Mr. T, who voices Crunch. In this game, he also voices Mike Tyson, who voices Tiny Tiger.
I'm just trying to do my job, and you go and cause all this chaos. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to eat your face.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best.
And we do get a new voice edition of Tom Kenny, aka SpongeBob SquarePants. He would voice the Rataticians.
Obviously, yes. Everyone knows that.
Wonder him! Oh, Bandicoot man!
Going down!
They are the weakest minions in the game. Production of Radical's new Crash game tinkered on into 2007, a year where Spider-Man 3 was the most popular film, the first generation of iPhone was introduced, MySpace was still somehow a popular web search, and Britney Spears shaved her head. Every 2 weeks during production, the Radicals would throw a big show-and-tell party. It kept the fun and motivation in the team. It was a big get-together where they would show off their new designs to coworkers, such as new Crash moves, a cool boss build, or just argue over how good the mac and cheese is in the cafeteria, which I never got to try, but as you know, I'm not sad about it because I have dogs.
Mac and cheese, not you.
Any road, music-wise, the Radicals didn't go with the a cappella Spiral Mouth from Twinsanity, which was an interesting choice, by the way. Instead, choosing their own in-house composer, Mark Barrow, though he is said to have taken inspiration from Spiral Mouth. In something not so surprising, the Crash Jacking title would be changed because of potential inappropriate usage. But also because within the game were countless movie references. Many of the level names were a play on movie titles, or from famous film quotes. So the title of the game would have to be a homage to a movie. The monsters you could jack would now become known as Titans, enabling the title to be Crash of the Titans. You know, like Clash of the Titans? Not this Clash of the Titans.
They need to be reminded of the order of things.
As this movie was not out yet in 2007, this Clash of the Titans.
The myth.
From 1981.
The magic.
A very noble thing happened during production of Crash of the Titans, as Crash became the new mascot of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, School of Youth programs, in an effort to promote and battle against blood cancer. So, go Crash, yeah. Where Radical was making the game for the home consoles of the day, over on the handheld side, the Nintendo DS version for Crash of the Titans was done by Amaze Entertainment, and it would differ quite a bit from the Radical version. Though the story is mostly the same, the details and gameplay are altered. For one, Dingodile is a boss in the game, where in Radical's version he is nowhere to be found. Tiny Tiger and Injun are also bosses in the DS version, but in the Radical version they remain in the back, cheering and sneering as the Titans mash and bash each other. But the biggest change of all was the addition of a laugh track to all the jokes.
Do what you can to slow down Crash Bandicoot. All right, let's get moving.
Okay, well maybe that's not the biggest addition, but It's an addition. Amaze Entertainment also developed the Game Boy Advance version. And yes, there is a PlayStation Portable version done by Supervillain Studios, but it's almost a complete copy of the Radical version, albeit with lower graphics because handheld. Towards the end of production, the team took to bug squashing and fixing some 10,000 errors, so Crash wouldn't crash your system. And on October 4th, 2007, Crash of the Titans hit stores. This time though, there would be no Japanese release, probably due to the game's crude humor. Nor would there be a PlayStation 3 release of the game, as the hardware was too tough to develop for. So says the rumor mill. Crash of the Titans received mixed reviews, with many reviews complaining about the game's fixed camera being too unforgiving and the platforming sections not being great. The DS at times received slightly higher ratings than its console version, with IGN saying it was one of the better games on the handheld market. Sales for Crash of the Titans weren't chart-topping, but they weren't terrible either. Titans would eventually gain its cult following. Still, the game being very different from its beloved roots back in the heyday of the PlayStation 1, left many fans feeling as though Crash of Titans wasn't necessarily a bad game, it just wasn't a Crash Bandicoot game. The Radicals would seek to improve upon everything in the sequel, a sequel that would gain more hate on the internet than Crash of the Titans. Alright, now I'm gonna level with you. There is a game that came out before Crash of the Titans. It's just I get reluctant to mention it because it's just so bad. Ah, well. History demands that we must remember that which we like to forget. I'm gonna go dig it out. Okay. I found it. Now, before we go over this, one quick thing. There was these rumors of a Crash game that was supposed to be exclusively for the Chinese market, and it was supposed to be completely online. Now, that's all we really know about it, as there's no gameplay, no art, no footage, nothing. So, therefore, we covered that game. Wonderful. So that brings us to the thing that, well, every Crash Bash fan was waiting for. But you know, as they say, be careful what you wish for, because that gave us Crash Boom Bang. Yeah, this game, Crash Boom Bang, not to be confused with the band of the same name, was the first game developed completely in Japan by the studio Dimps. Dimps has developed many ports and some Sonic games, so why not a party game? I mean, look at their CEO. Now he looks ready to party. Boom Bang plays out like a board game. You roll dice and you travel from square to square, and then you get minigame to minigame. A new baddie was created just for Boomity Bang, the Viscount Devil, because he's a Tasmanian devil. In the US version, he's merely the Viscount. The devil part probably had too many religious connotations to be kosher in the US. In Boom Bang, the Viscount is building a resort in Tasmania, and just happens to find a map to the secret location of the coveted Super Crystal. But there are too many puzzles to solve, so he decides to get the cleverest and strongest characters in the world, and trick them into finding the crystals for him. So he creates this facade of a contest called the World Cannonball Race. Winner gets $100 million. Coco and Crash receive the invitation because I guess the cleverest and strongest characters in the world were busy, and they're off to the World Cannonball Race. What could go wrong? Bada bing, bada boom, bada. Shifting back to Canada's own Radical Entertainment, they began working on the next Crash game immediately after Crash of the Titans was finished. Under the title Invasion of the Bandicoot Snatchers, named after the 1956 movie, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or the 1978 remake of that same movie, take your pick which one. Radical also began work on a new original game series. This would be the series that would eventually lead to their demise. Nearly 2 months after Crash of the Titans was released, the seeds of massive corporate change were planted. And what came was a move largely no one on Wall Street predicted. Radical's owner, Vivendi Universal, would merge with Activision, the company behind the popular Call of Duty and Guitar Hero franchises. The rare merger of two Titan game studios would rise the power of Activision to the heights of the game industry's biggest studio, Electronic Arts. In a Forbes article, the merger stated,
Vivendi's game business, while successful, generated revenues of only 804 million euros of its parent company's $20 billion in 2006. The cash comes almost exclusively from Blizzard's extremely popular online role-playing game.
That popular role-playing game is, of course, World of Warcraft from Blizzard Entertainment, which was acquired by Vivendi back in 1998. Do note, the stock market is a forward-thinking machine, where current success means little compared to future expectation. And expectations couldn't be higher for the Vivendi-Activision merger, now called Activision Blizzard. Blizzard gets the namesake because World of Warcraft was the big cash cow. It was what was known.
I'm Chuck Norris, and I approve this game. World of Warcraft.
And there was numerous market experts who doubted whether Activision Blizzard could keep up growth and revenue. Radical with its Crash was a small fish within a newly crowned corporate giant ocean. Crash was not the household name he once was, and Crash the Titan's earnings paled in comparison to the amount from a Call of Duty, a Guitar Hero, or the World of Warcraft. Corporate expectation demanded Radical's next game would have to be their best yet. It would be a while before Activision Blizzard's corporate influence would reveal itself. Until then, Radical strived to make a good game, and that meant listening to their fans. Fans wanted Coco to be playable. This time, she would be. They knew fans loved old characters, so they brought back the villainous Nitrous Brio.
So, I have invented recycling!
Cycle, reduce, reuse.
Remember the embryo patented phrase, reuse, recycle, revenge!
Nitrous Brio, who hadn't been back since Crash Bash, and that was a PS1 game. There's been 2 consoles since. Fans wanted free romping. Usually it's called free roaming, but in a Crash Bandicoot game it's called free romping. Okay. The lowdown of it just means there's more places on the Wumpa Islands to explore. You can even explore Crash's house, which was closed in the prior game, but now is a hub for watching cutscenes and choosing different Crash skins. Fans wanted a free camera they could control, like Radical did in Tag Team Racing, so they gave the... Whoa, wait a minute, no they didn't.
We considered full camera control for this game, but decided against it for 3 reasons. For one, the graphics can look a lot better because we can build more detail into the things we know you can see. On the gameplay side, the combat works well with a fixed camera because you can concentrate on the characters and what they're doing without having to babysit the camera. Last but not least, a fixed camera means we can stay in full screen graphics in co-op mode. If you have a manual camera control, you are pretty much forced to go into split screen. Joe McGinn, lead designer.
Crash would still be jacking Titans, but instead of having to jack off your Titan, you could put it away for later. Wow, yeah, I do realize how that last statement could be interpreted. But holding on to your Titan allowed for you to now upgrade your Titan as well, as Crash himself. You do this by collecting the mojo.
Mojo, baby, yeah!
The combat is refined and improved and still plays a role, but we've made a conscious effort to expand non-combat gameplay opportunities. This means things like using enemy powers to solve puzzles and Crash's new platforming moves. Crash of the Titans had about a 70-30 combat to platforming split. In Mind Over Mutant, we've achieved closer to 50-50, which we hope will please all our fans. Joe McGinn.
Oh, we'll see on that, Joe. This time around, you'll utilize your Titan to solve puzzles, open new paths, and defeat bosses. Bringing us to one of the most unique aspects of the game, the cutscenes. Each scene takes its own animation style from various genres and cartoon styles. Hand puppets, the Animatrix.
This is ultra cool.
South Park. Dragon Ball. Not to mention a multitude of film and pop culture references, centering around a story where Cortex and Embryo team up using Brio's newly invented headset called the Envy, that turns wearers into teeth-bearing monsters, aka mutants. Like any upstanding evil dude, Cortex puts the NV on the market. This convinces Crash, Coco, and Crunch to get their very own NVs. Coco and Crunch fall under the control of the NV, while Crash's NV conveniently malfunctions. So Crash is off to save his sister and brother and the critters of the Wumpa Islands. Again. The game had a super fast development time of only 1 year. Oh, and they had to change the game's name. Seems Invasion of the Bandicoot Snatchers didn't translate so well into other languages in order to get the joke. Instead, it would now be called Mind Over Mutant, after the motivational line, Mind Over Matter. Reviews were mostly decent to slightly above average. The fixed camera still got hate, so did the excessive backtracking the free romping caused. The game's difficulty and length was frequently cited as being too easy and too short. The DS version was developed by Tosei, a Japan studio. It got the worst reviews. Craig Harris of IGN put it bluntly enough. Boring, drab, uninspired beat-em-up, with none of what made last year's game so good on the DS. Sales for Mind Over Mutant wasn't bad, but it wasn't flying off store shelves either. MOM and Titans has its fans, but there wasn't enough of them in Activision Blizzard's eyes. Even though Mind Over Mutant made many improvements, it still seems to get more disdain online than Crash of the Titans. For a lot of Crash fans, they felt these were okay games, but this was not the Crash they grew up with. From the kid audience these radical Crash games seem to be aimed for, how many of these kids wanted to play a game jacking cutesy monsters, or jacking cars in Grand Theft Auto, or shooting people in the face in Call of Duty? The short answer is, not enough. Even Radical's next game was akin to the trend of the industry at the time. Prototype was released in June of 2009, a darker, grittier, more mature action game. So what happened to Crash? What was next for him? Well, that brings us to Crash Landed. Radical started on it after the release of Mind Over Mutant. The idea was how to recreate the old flair that Crash used to have. Radical eventually settled on the idea of a full reboot that would tell the original story of Crash, showing how he mutated, and there would be smaller mutated bandicoots as well. They would be called Bandicoots, who weren't quite as developed as Crash. He would have to rescue them in a more open world. This Crash would have more exaggerated expressions like the original games. Mojo orbs still seemed to be there.
Mojo, baby, yeah!
And it seemed to be taking ideas from the Crash games of old, which would probably make a lot of the old fans really happy, while adding in a new invention mechanic where you could find items and combine them into tools like a jetpack or a bazooka, or as they called it, a frogzooka. In an old press kit, the game was renamed I Am Crash Bandicoot. We know Radical has a fondness for film title parodies. I Am Crash Bandicoot is a play on the film or novel I Am Legend. Slated for a 2010 release, development continued through 2009. Keep in mind that the US from 2007 to 2009 fell into the greatest economic downturn since the Great Depression. The Activision Blizzard purge was about to begin. Activision Blizzard initiated its first round of layoffs. They would be at the company's internal studios, Neversoft, Luxoflux, Underground Development, and Crash's home, Radical Entertainment. Citing the significant decline of music-based games like Guitar Hero, sales shifting to digital, and the increased popularity of online games as the reason for the layoffs.
Activision Publishing continually evaluates its resources to ensure that they are properly matched against its product slate and strategic goals. In 2010, the company's SKU count will be smaller than in 2009, driven in part by a decrease in the number of music-based games we will be releasing. Activision Blizzard.
Radical would lose 90 staff members, Neversoft lost 56, and Luxoflux will be shut down completely. Also, Massive Entertainment, owned by Activision Blizzard, was told they had 6 weeks to find somebody to buy them, or they would be shut down. According to Massive's CEO, the only reason Massive wasn't immediately shut down was because someone convinced Activision Blizzard's CEO Bobby Kotick that selling the company would be better than just shutting it down. Massive would be saved at the last minute by Ubisoft.
As we discussed on our earnings conference call yesterday, we are directing our resources against the largest and most profitable business segments. And as part of this initiative, we are realigning our resources to better reflect our slate and the market opportunities. Activision Blizzard, Maryanne Latif.
During these layoffs, Activision shut down production on Crash Landed. This in turn caused the cancellation of a new unannounced Crash racing game, which was being developed by High Impact Games. Possibly the lack of substantial results on Crash Landed reportedly could have increased ActiBlizz's reason for pulling the plug. And with such a close release date, around the corner was just another nail in the coffin. This time there would be no handing over the project to another studio, leaving both games dead, forever. The final nail though would be the worst of all, and it wasn't even Crash's fault. Moving into 2012, more Activision Blizzard layoffs would ensue, as the Guitar Hero sales plummeted, resulting in the game series being cancelled. A series that 5 years ago accounted for 30% of the company's quarterly revenue. And the hits just keep on coming as World of Warcraft loses 2 million subscribers. As a result, the Blizzard side of Activision lays off 600 employees. Next, Activision canceled another game, True Crime Hong Kong. Through all this, Radical managed to stay alive amongst the company's turmoil. Radical's fate, though, lie in how successful Prototype 2 would be. If it was a hit, then, maybe, just maybe, they could go back to Crash. Prototype 2 was released to generally favorable reviews, and was the highest-selling game of April 2012. But that success wasn't enough.
Although we made a substantial investment in the Prototype IP, it did not find a broad commercial audience. Radical is a very talented team of developers. However, we have explored various options for the studio, including a potential sale of the business, and have made a difficult conclusion through the consultation process that the only remaining option is a significant reduction in staff. As such, some employees will remain working for Radical Entertainment supporting other existing Activision publishing projects, but the studio will cease development of its own games going forward. Activision rep.
With confirmation on Twitter to Radical's demise, though technically Radical was not shut down, it was just reduced to a shadow of its former self. They would help out with production on Destiny in 2014, but after that, nothing. On Radical's Twitter, they posted,
Just a quick note to our great fans and friends. The rumors of our closure have been greatly exaggerated. We're still here! More later, at Radical_ENT.
There would be no more later, as that was their last tweet as of September 2012.
Crash is home at Radical. Period.
Crash's so-called home was now a mere shell, and Activision Blizzard focusing on its core business, Call of Duty and Blizzard games. Crash did not seem to be in the company's future. The next few years only saw a small slew of Crash mobile games coming out until 2010. After that, the years would go by and nothing. No new Crash games. If you type in Radical's address today to Google Maps, you get to see the building that Radical once held. As you can see, their name is no longer on the building. However, a game studio does reside there by the name of Demonware, and wouldn't you know it, they are owned by Activision Blizzard. Demonware does a bunch of the online work for games such as Call of Duty.
It's unfortunate in a lot of ways that Universal then became what Universal was, and then Vivendi, and then eventually sold it off to Activision. Crash has become lost in the shuffle, because it could have been one of the great characters of all time, based on where it was in 1998 or 1999. Jason Rubin.
Sad word from Crash's original co-creator, Jason Rubin. As the years pressed on, rumors started to emerge about a possible new Crash, but with still nothing to reveal from Activision. Crash fans and the internet weighed in on what a new Crash game would look like. After a Reddit user named Coco Bandicoot, fitting, posted a theory about a PlayStation commercial with a hidden message that possibly alluded to the idea that Sony bought back Crash.
You could see that there was like a sign that looked like Bandicoot. On top of it, an arrow pointing up, and then what looked like the Sony Computer Entertainment America.
To further give evidence to this claim, Activision took Crash off its website. Finally, Activision released this statement to Game Informer.
Activision owns Crash Bandicoot, and we continue to explore ways in which we could bring the beloved series back to life. Activision representative.
This statement didn't really reveal that they were actually working on anything, but for the fans, it kept the hope alive.
I have high hopes that they will someday dust off Crash and bring him back to his original glory. Jason Rubin.
As fans would eventually get their insane trilogy, a full remake of the original 3 Crash games. They finally showed up 9 years after the release of Mind Over Mutant. But that's a story for another day. In closing, let us remember Radical Entertainment, not just for their Crash games, but also for a slew of other games across its 21-year history. Many of us, these games were fun and exciting worlds to get lost in. If you like this video, please subscribe down below and click that bell icon so you'll be notified when all the next videos come up here on Game Nerd Legacy. Please leave a comment below and tell me what you thought of Radical's Crash games and what your experience was with them. Thanks for watching. I'm Kev, signing off. Until next time.